Peter, we're waiting on 4 members. So I just thought I'd let you know and make sure you could hear us.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Mhm.
Thank you.
How's Allie doing, Peter?
I'm
Uh,
gonna I'm gonna mute you just because this is recording.
Oh, it
Okay.
is. Okay.
Yeah. It's just, this is really getting old. This is 6
Good
weeks.
evening. I'd like to call the
Gas, food.
August 31st regular meeting of the Webster Groves Board of Adjustment to order. Tom, would you please take the roll call?
Charles Yankee,
Here,
Yankee,
here,
Randy Sprague,
Here.
John Burse,
here.
Debbie Sahlberg,
Here.
and I'm Tom Walsh.
In addition to the board, we have Mara Perry, the Director of Planning and Development, and we have our attorney, Mr. Buntrager, who is attending by Zoom this evening because he might be ill. Might be contagious. So this will be we have one petition that we're talking about tonight. So the order of presentation will be as follows. The city will present their case. Then the applicant and any individuals in favor will present information. Then we'll ask for anyone who is opposed to the petition, and then we will close the public session and open for board discussion and decision. The proceedings will be recorded. We ask you to speak clearly and one at a time. We do ask you to come to the podium. We will vote on this application tonight. I'm sorry, Mara, is there a difference for an appeal, or is it 4 members out of 5?
Still 4 members out of 5.
Approval will take 4 out of the 5 board members' approval. Please try not to be redundant or repetitive in your comments. Tom, would you please read the powers relative to the appeal?
Okay, powers relative to heirs. To hear and decide appeals where it is alleged there is an error in any order, requirement, decision, or determination made by the Director of Planning and Development in the enforcement of this code.
Thank you. Would you please read the docket into the record?
Ms. Salisbury, if I could, just to clarify
Docket.
this,
Wait, sorry, hold on a second. Hold on, Peter,
I understand. I wanted to clarify the powers.
no, I wanted to make you louder. We can't hear you very well. Can you keep
Understood.
talking?
Yes, am I louder now?
Try again.
Any better?
Yes, I had to change the speakers.
Got it. So just to clarify for the board, because I know we haven't done many of these, the powers of the board are, there has been a determination made by the Director of Planning. Your job is to review the evidence, and it would require 4 of 5 votes to determine there was an error made by the director in order to reverse that decision.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, docket 2393, a petition submitted by Janet Noble for an application for appeal. The applicant has petitioned to appeal the determination of the Director of Planning and Development under section 111.1 of the 2015 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code as amended in chapter 30 of the Municipal Code of Webster Groves and under section 53.300 of the Municipal Code of Webster Groves. The applicant alleges that city staff incorrectly enforced the provisions of section 31.010 regarding work at the property line, which has caused a detriment of the neighboring property at 337 North Gore Avenue. The property is located at 333 North Gore Avenue within the A4 7,500 square foot residential district.
Thank you. Does Mr. Buntrager, would you like to present the exhibits?
You're muted.
Yes. For the purposes of this hearing, the city would ask that exhibits 1 through 9 be reflected in the record.
Thank you.
And we would call Mara Perry to testify.
Mara, could you please?
So before you do that, if you'll look at the PowerPoint, we had the exhibits that were submitted after the fact, and we were going to read those into the record so that they are identified for because they did not have labels on them, so that they're identified for the members, so that they would be able to reference them if they needed to. So did you want to go ahead and read those into the record for them?
Yes, I can do that. So part of the record and I believe part of your packets, right, Mara?
They were turned in after the fact, so they did not receive them initially with their packets last week. But they were emailed last night, and then they were given to them in hard copy on the dais.
Okay, so they're 9 exhibits presented by the applicant. That's Exhibit A1, a letter from Eric Karch, A2, a letter from James Rhodes, Exhibit A3, 16 photos that are undated, Exhibit A4, International Building Code Table 1086.2, A5, Foundation Recovery Systems Glossary Definition of Crushed Stone, A6, email from Janet Noble to now Mayor Arnold, Exhibit A7, excerpt from the Grand Rapids Press, published September 11th, 2007. Exhibit A8, excerpt from the Grand Rapids Press, published September 11th, 2007. Exhibit A9, photo of new retaining wall undated.
Thank you.
And the city would ask Mara Perry to testify.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Could you please state your name?
Mara Perry,
And what is your current title?
Director of Planning and Development.
Is that with the city of Webster Groves?
That is
And what are your job duties with the city of Webster Groves?
to administer and execute zoning regulations.
Through your work with the city, are you familiar with 333, and it says south, but I believe it's North Gore Avenue?
Yes, I am.
And how are you familiar with that?
It's located within the city of Webster Groves.
In which zoning district is it located?
It's in the A4 7,500 square foot zoning district.
And as part of your job, are you familiar with both the housing and nuisance codes that apply to that property?
Yes, I am.
Within the last couple of months, have there been any citations that you're aware of at that property?
Yes. So I'm going to first read the nuisance section that was applied before I continue further, because that is the section that's being appealed. So 31.010, definition and enumeration of nuisances. Every act or thing done or made, permitted or allowed or continued on any property, public or private, by any person or corporation, its agents or servants, to the annoyance, detriment, damage, or injury of the public, or which is injurious to the public health, safety, or welfare, is hereby declared to be a public nuisance, and as such a misdemeanor punishable under section 31.090. The code further delineates very specific nuisances, but says that there is that is not all of the nuisances, that it has a general detriment section that we usually apply when we have something that is more unusual in nature.
Right. Have you received any complaints to that location at 333 North Gore since approximately April of this year?
Yes.
How many?
We've received our first complaint, and the area in question is highlighted in blue along the property line. It's the western property line between 333 and 337. On April 17th, we received a complaint. The complaint was regarding that work was potentially being done without a permit at the property at 333 North Gore. I sent a staff member out in order to assess the situation and determine whether the items that were being worked on would have required a permit. At that time, it was determined that a permit was not needed, and photographs were taken by my staff member in order to document what he was able to see at that time. The first 2 photos that are in your packet under Exhibit 6A show just leading up to the property line, and not in the area in question, but just leading up to the property line along the shared property line. These photos were taken of the wall that was being constructed You can see the fence line of the neighboring fence that was existing, and then the work that was in process at that time along the property. And then even closer, a little bit about the detail of what was there at that time in terms of the wall and the configuration of the land under and around the existing fence that was right on the shared property line.
That was on April 17th of 2023. Were there any violations determined that date?
On that date, we determined there were no violations. It did not require a permit, and the work was being done. And we did not need to send anything to the property owner at that time.
Were there any other complaints from the property around that time?
So then, just over a month later, we received a complaint on May 31st. It was submitted to the city stating that the work that had been done, that had previously been determined that did not need a permit, had undermined the fence that was located along that shared property line at 337 North Gore. A determination at that time was that the work that had been done that was in our minds had potentially been completed, but potentially had not been completed because we couldn't tell the complete situation. We had access to the complainant's yard and we were viewing it from the complainant's yard. But from what we could see from the complainant's yard, the area underneath the fence had been undermined to the point where there was no longer a lot of dirt or soil around the posts. There was a larger area under the posts and there was no longer soil around some of the base of the posts. There was only rock, which was not keeping it stable. And the neighbor had to come back and create some bungee cords or a system to hold that fence up to keep it from falling onto the other property.
Okay.
It is our understanding per notes that the police department had seen a fence sort of, or the gate kind of waving in the wind and had called, I think because of their security camera, had called them to let them know that the fence had started to collapse. And then they came home and stabilized it. So the photos that we have here indicate sort of the area underneath the fence that is no longer in the previous month when we had looked at it. There wasn't work under the fence. The wall itself was being established, but not the land under the soil under the fence. At this point, when we went back out, most of that soil had been removed and it had destabilized the fence because all that was under it was this rock. So at that time, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, after viewing the property and its state, were there any determinations made as to violations?
Yes, a determination was made and a letter was sent on June 5th. That was an infraction notice asking or requiring that the work to be done to stabilize what had become a problem to the neighboring property and to address that in a manner that would, again, stabilize the fence so it would not be able to be so that it would not collapse down from the neighboring property. The letter is in your packet, and that letter identifies, sorry, I'm pulling it out. That letter identifies simply that the situation must be corrected. We did not give them a specific, we did not tell them that the retaining wall had to be removed. We did not tell them that they had to fill it with soil. We simply said that along that needed to be corrected. It might need a permit so that it could be stable.
And Mara, who was it that made the determination that there was a nuisance violation?
So my plan reviewer, who is also an inspector, Andrew Klosterman, went out into the field. He then continued to work with my building commissioner, Travis Ham, who issued the violation notice, which is considered a courtesy infraction notice. He usually works with each of our code enforcement officers in making that determination on nuisance properties when it is an unusual nuisance versus just a standard grass or something else.
And after that violation letter was sent, did you have any communication with the individual at 333 North Gore?
So yes, in our violation notice, it requires that if you would like to appeal the violation, you need to provide it in writing within 10 days. So on June 16th, we did receive a letter, which is in your exhibit as a 6D, that just simply says, we would like to appeal. So at that time, we asked for additional information because we didn't have any other information as to why they felt that they needed to appeal this. So we gave additional time, and we did receive a second formal appeal on June 29th, which is your exhibit 6E, asking to appeal the infraction notice regarding the neighbor's fence. So we gave more than the additional 10 days. The first 10 days, we did receive just a request to appeal. We continued it until we received the more formal letter on the 29th with the request to appeal. We then contacted the applicant to let her know that we would be reviewing it and we would get back with her with a formal determination. So we, in your exhibit 6F, got back with a formal determination that we had rejected the appeal in regards to the violation on the property, that the work that was done was detrimental to the fence that had been installed a number of years prior along the property line, that the soil along the property line was not replaced to that same level around the posts of the fence, and the rock in its place was removing the stabilization of the post locations. So we denied the appeal at that time, which then gave another 30 days for the right to appeal the decision to the Board of Adjustment. You will see that on, we then in addition sent another courtesy infraction notice, which we sent out on July 24th, because we had not heard at that time and we'd already passed the time frame for it to have been addressed. On August 9th, an appointment was made to come and talk with staff about the appeal to the Board of Adjustment. You will see in Exhibit 6H, these were additional documents that were brought into City Hall for staff to review. And we confirmed on the 10th, the next day, that the appeal that we had denied as staff was upheld, and the ability to still apply to the Board of Adjustment was instated.
And so there is a request to appeal this obviously in front of this board, which is why we are here this evening, correct?
That is correct.
And just so for the board's clarification, whose decision is it that is being appealed?
So it is my decision, my final decision letter that's being appealed in regards to the appeal to the violation.
Did you have anything else to add?
I have nothing else to add. I do have, in case there are additional questions, both Andrew Klosterman and Travis Ham available should you need them. But we were focusing our information to you based on the information that we have as the city as a whole. But again, if there's specific questions that you need to the other staff members, they are available.
Do any board members have any questions for Ms. Perry? Go ahead.
Do the images in Exhibit 6H represent conditions before the retaining wall was built,
Yes,
even though they're undated?
they are undated. Some of those go back as far as during the construction of the house, which goes back to 2018. So yes, some of the water and other things are related to multiple years, and not specific to the retaining wall condition. So it was under construction in 2018. So right now we're 2015. And prior to that, we were 2009.
I can't hear you, which means the recording can't hear you either.
Wow. Louder.
Is the green light
Oh.
on?
Okay, yeah. So we're built under, at that time, the house was being built under IRC 2009?
Correct.
Okay,
And then just note, though at that time, our stormwater prevention code and all of our other codes were still in place in regards to all the other elements related to the site, fence codes, all of those others were all the same as they are today.
so that's IRC 2009.
No, I'm saying the house was built under IRC 2009, but the
Okay.
house is also built under our various other chapters that are not related to IRC.
Oh, okay,
So we still have other codes in the zoning ordinance, as well as the city code that relate to land disturbance, stormwater,
okay,
the fences, all of those other code sections are still the same as today.
as today. Okay, all right.
So these pictures of the fence, the only place work was done is where the fence is falling or collapsing, right? Correct? 'Cause obviously in the backyard and around the corner of the lot, that fence looks normal. So we're just talking about an area. I think you had it in blue on one of the exhibits. And that's where the work was done that's in question, right?
So
Only there or-
the area that is collapsing is adjacent to the area where the wall was done. The wall does not go the entire length of the property. But some of the photos that you're seeing are ones, again, I want to make sure we're clear on, again, some of these are from a couple years back. If you're looking at the different things with the different fences, there used to be two fences there. So you've
Yeah.
got to realize one of the fences was on 333.
Right.
That fence was removed and then the wall was put in place. The second fence is a fence that was built on 337, which was built after the house was completed. So you've got two fences in the various photographs.
Yes.
And so providing clarification, in most cases, the photos are being taken from 333. So the fence that you see closest or on the left-hand side is 333's fence, which is no longer in place. And then the other fence is for 337, which had to be built in place when both fences were built back to back.
That makes more sense.
I was gonna ask if
Yeah.
both fences
That,
were
that
there
helps
because
me a lot.
I was unable to
Was that-
tell.
I was a little
from the visitor
confused on
side.
I went by and I only saw one fence.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was struggling to understand where it was, and I now
Right.
see, okay,
Right.
this makes sense.
Mara, do you, during the construction, do you require, and this may seem unrelated, but during the construction of the house, after the foundation is dug, do you require, soil testing done?
So I'm going to say that that is unrelated because at this point, we are just dealing with the wall that was constructed
Okay,
and the detriment that it made by constructing the wall.
okay. Well, the reason why I ask is because, the soil is in question here and what damage that has caused, with the fence and the erosion and all that. And so the character of the soil and how that relates to the damages that was done, if that has any relationship to, what's caused all that.
So again, I'm going to, the house was built in 2018. All of this work was done this past year.
Right.
So our focus in addressing it is that something has been done along the property line that has caused a detriment to the neighboring property, in particular the fence. So our focus is on that.
So it's not
I have one other.
it's not appropriate for me to ask if I mean, I know that you have to get a fence permit to construct a fence, but are there standards for posts and frost line and stuff like that? for fence construction? Because I've never gotten a fence. I've never put up a fence.
Yeah, so our code actually does not require specifics in regards to, we only inspect the fence after the fence has been installed. So no, there are not specific requirements in regards to how deep the posts are or how they install them. They have to install them on their own property, but they can install them up to the property line. They are supposed to install them with the good side facing the neighbor. So do note that 333 had an improperly installed, who knows how long ago, fence that had the materials and all the other parts of the, what we would call the bad side of the fence facing the neighboring property. So when they were built back to back, the one fence and the other fence, the one fence had elements that kind of connected in some ways to, they normally would have both have their good sides facing each other and not have problems where they would attach to each other in some ways.
So Mara, can I ask you this? I'm involved in a project we're doing in the city and I was just out there and we're doing a fence.
Mhm.
Building inspector came out and he inspected the holes for the fence. Does Webster Groves do
Yeah.
that here?
The city of Webster Groves only requires a final fence inspection
Okay,
for us to determine height, materials, and location.
okay. Okay. So the depth of the holes, the radius, all that's at the discretion of the owner, the fence, installer, all that's at their discretion. The material that's poured into the hole to support the vertical supports, that's all at the discretion of the fence.
It is. There's nothing in our codes that makes specific requirements about any of that.
Okay. All right. Very good.
John, you had another
I
question.
do have another question. It's hard not to notice in the images in 6H that the fence of 337 in those images is pretty cattywampus and appears to be already teetering. My question is, do we know when the blue straps in Exhibit 6B were installed? Because the images in 6A appear that the 337 fence is now straight. However, in 6H, the 337 fence is clearly not.
Sure. So the understanding that we have based on some of the things we've seen and then other elements was that the fence at 337, because of the backwards nature of the fence at 333, at some points, because the grade lowered, there were elements of the backside of the rails that connected the fence and the materials that hooked themselves onto the other fence. So as one of the fences was, you'll see there's a lot of growth between them. That growth was causing some problems starting to grow up between the two fences. And then the one fence, because it had the backside of it, was catching underneath the bottom of the other fence. So when that one fence started to collapse onto 333, it was starting to pull the fence at 337. Once that fence was removed, the fence stayed rather straight. Once all that material and other things, the growth was growing up between it, it was rather straight when we went to look at it and was not falling over. The pictures, again, you can ask my inspector who was out there at that time. He took those pictures at that time. It was straight. The wall was being constructed. There was still soil around the posts. And then when we were called back out, there's a differentiation you can see to what's below the fence from that side, and the things holding it and keeping it straight at that time were placed there at some point at that point. I mean, if we had to, we could probably call the police department who had to call about it. They would probably also know, but we have the dates that we went out to inspect.
Sure.
Mara, just to follow up with my line of questioning on the fence, on the retaining wall, because of the height, then there was no inspection or anything on the retaining wall in terms of construction and all that. So that was,
So any retaining walls that are less than 3 feet in height, and that's from footing up to top of wall,
top of
are
wall.
not required to have a building permit within the city of Webster Groves.
Okay,
So we
got it.
would not have done any inspections in regards to that, which is why when we went out to the first complaint,
Right.
that we did not cite them for doing work without a permit.
got it.
One other question, Deb.
Sure.
Has the applicant or is there any survey data that actually confirms where the fence and the retaining wall are in relation to the property line?
So at this time, 333 does not have a current survey that we have seen. 337 was required to do a survey of their property in order to do their stormwater plan, the build for the new house, all of that. And at that time, their property was surveyed. So again, it wasn't surveyed after the fact. We don't require them to come back and resurvey after a fence has been installed. So there could still be questions in regards to that. But when they surveyed the property to build the new house, it did make some determination at that time on neighboring encroachments or anything that might have been there at that time.
As part of the final inspection?
As part of their original survey to plan out where the house was going to go and where all the improvements were going to go. That showed any encroachments. There was some fence encroachments both to the west and to the south, if I remember correctly. It's been a number of years. But it did identify any potential encroachments and other fences around the property when the new house was in for their plans.
So you don't recall that there were any encroachments from the subject property at 333?
I don't recall any, but I don't have that in front of me.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ham or the inspector? Would anyone like to ask them questions? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Mara, do you have anything else before we ask the app for the? Okay.
No, nothing
Mara,
else.
if I
sorry.
could just one final set of questions I want to clarify. So you determined on appeal that there was a nuisance that existed. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
And the nuisance itself is related to the fence from the neighbor's fence at 337, right?
That is correct.
And in your determination, what caused the fence to collapse or lean or whatever it is in the manner it's leaning?
So the removal of the soil that had been around it and the level of the soil. So the overall level had decreased down lower to where the posts were. And then when it was replaced with just rock, there's nothing on the backside above that small retaining wall to kind of keep or hold those posts in place. So the overall soil level had gone down and then the rock was put in place. We're not asking for the wall to be, filled with soil or anything like that. It's more just figuring out ways to stabilize those posts so that they are no longer, essentially the rest of the ground on the opposite side of it has been removed and there's no other element holding it in place.
So are the posts being held, supported by rock
Right now,
right now?
on the eastern side, they're being supported by rock.
And not rock and soil, they just put rock in.
There's just rock around it.
That's supported by rock from the retaining wall.
No, if you see the differentiation of where the retaining wall ends, which it's in, I think if you look at the applicant's very last exhibit, A9, there's rock around it, but then the wall steps in from there.
Okay,
And then there's a large gap now for where the posts had been completely covered by the ground on both sides.
Yeah.
Now it's been removed from the eastern side and there's only rock in place versus having some solid ground. It's the very, very last of the applicant's exhibits, which would be in the envelope. And we labeled that one A9. I know it gets a little confusing. There's a lot of them in there.
Okay, is it, Amara, do you have anything else?
Nothing else.
Peter, do you have anything else before we move to the,
I do not.
okay. Who's here tonight for docket, 2393? Would you please come to the podium? Okay, so if you state your name and then raise your right hand.
Janet Noble.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
I have a question, Mira, something about what you said just now. So you're not asking me to remove all of it?
You need to stay at they need to.
Okay, well, I can't see your face.
Sorry.
So you're asking me to remove just the top of the rock or all of the rock? Because when I got the email from Travis, he said, remove all of the rock and put soil down there. That's what his email states. So that's why I'm questioning this. There was no discussion that I could leave part of the rock. It was remove all of the soil and remove all of the rock and put all of it, the soil back. And my contention of that was,
Hold on 2 seconds. Let me answer that question. And I apologize that you can't see me. I've got to speak into the microphone and they have this all set up in some way. So again, the violation letter states that you have to figure out a way to resolve it, to stabilize it. We do not specify how it is stabilized. Someone might need to provide a permit and you might need someone to help with the stabilization, but we do not specifically state that you have to use soil. It
okay,
has to be stabilized in some way.
can you show me which letter that is? Because I was not going by that. I was going by specifically what Travis had sent me in the email.
So just a moment. So City Exhibit 6C states repair, replace fence located along shared property line. So essentially fix whatever is not working or is having problems. We then resent one, which is Exhibit 6G, repair, replace fence located along shared property line. So we are simply stating that the area needs to be repaired or fixed. And the manner in which it gets fixed is not up to us. It just needs to be stabilized.
Okay, can I say some things or is it?
Well, yeah, that's,
Okay.
that's why you're up here.
Time.
You bet.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I have 3 pages here of how we got to this. I'd like to read this. I know it's very long, but I think it adds credibility to some of the actions that I took.
Please go ahead.
I can go ahead?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. I will try to read quickly. The pictures show a sequence of how the side property looked and what has happened to bring me to this event. So it's been going on for about 7 years. I'm tired of this. Mara's tired of this. Andrew and Travis, I'm sure, are tired of this. So I want to get it resolved as soon as possible. My property is lower from the 337 property. My property was built in 1940s and it has always been lower. Over the years, soil erosion has occurred. The previous property owner, not the current owner now, did some construction work which caused water to come in my side yard and damage my fence. She corrected some of this with plants and a pervious driveway with a curb to her back garage. There was a garage in the backyard, way, way, way in the backyard, which I'm not sure if you have that picture or not. You probably don't. So she had an asphalt driveway put in. Well, Mr. Harney told me it was an impervious or pervious asphalt driveway. And they put a curb on the driveway so that water would not come down my yard. Yay. So that helped for a period of time. Well, I got an attorney because it still did not take care of the erosion that was on my property.
Now, excuse me, can I interrupt? That's all the new house, right?
But no, this is the first, the
This is-
previous owner.
Okay, the previous owner, before the new house. Okay, all right.
Previous owner. So I got an attorney and one day my attorney called, we sent paperwork to her side. She got an attorney. And my attorney called me one day and said, she's moving. I said, what do you mean she's moving? Because, you know, I've served her papers, blah, blah, blah. She's moving. I said, well, what are we going to do about this lawsuit and about correction to my property? Well, here's bad advice from attorney. Well, things may get better once she moves and somebody else buys this property. Guess what? They did not get better. They got worse. The realtor, I guess, decided, or somebody decided that it was a tear down. So they tore the house down and you see the construction that was started when this happened. So during the construction period, you saw the pictures of there's nothing in the backyard to absorb the water. It keeps pouring, pouring, pouring. I called Mara. This developer was very difficult to deal with. He was hardly ever at the property when the construction crew was there. They drive, there's pictures showing. He had a worker. These people were from Bosnia. I think they had selective hearing because on certain days they would understand some things. And then other days that when I would question them, they'd act like they didn't understand what I was talking about. So it was just a nightmare trying to deal with them. Mayor would send an inspector out. The inspector also had problems dealing with these people. So the one picture shows they were right near my fence with the backhoe. So I'm surprised that my fence stood as long as it did. So it all started again there. So then the developer built the house, put up a McMansion. While it was being built, there was no soil, there was no sod in the backyard. So all that came and destroyed and pushed more erosion on my side. So that's why my side is in such bad shape. So I kept calling. And for months, the dirt pile in the back was very high, no grass, no vegetation in the backyard at all. Water kept coming until one night we got a big rain. Nothing significant was done until that night. Bingo, finally, the night of the torrential storm, there happened to be a city hall meeting up here. So I marched up here with my cell phone, pictures taken of the rain coming down. At this point, rain was coming down so hard that it was almost entering my back door. Those are the two pictures that I have there for you to look at.
Now, those were in the exhibit that we received?
Yeah.
Okay.
The packet that I just brought up here yesterday.
Right, so.
So the next day, Mr. Harney issued a stop work order. So then some things were done. However, after the house was sold, erosion started to come in again. Some water started to come in. However, it was not nearly as severe as before that. So I'm just trying to establish that this has been going on a long time.
Huh.
And I've had to do things to my property to correct some of this. And I didn't cause this, this came to me. Apparently the stormwater management plans that were in place didn't do anything about the soil coming way, way, way in the backyard where the garage used to be. Sod was put near the fence. The developer didn't water it. The sod died. He put sod down again. And they didn't put it next to the fence. I have pictures there that show you how it looked next to my fence when my fence was starting to tip. These pictures here that I'm seeing here has never looked like that when I've looked over the fence. So I don't know if they did this recently. It looks like it's even over there, but it wasn't even when I took that one picture. You can see that one picture, it looks like I took it at night and the the soil on that side was coming down on where their fence is. So that would be an ideal situation for rainwater to fall down there. And that's what happened. Do you all see that picture?
Well, we have, which picture do you think it is, Randy?
I think it's, I see the guy here with.
Yeah, see the
Back
backhoe one. We see the rain, the water,
I see the water.
water pictures.
Waters with Pictures, and then I think.
It's after that.
Where the dirt gets kind of heading down towards.
It's a dark, it's a picture taken at night.
Here, hold this one up and see if.
This one,
I can't hear you.
is this one that you were referring to?
No.
Oh.
This one.
Oh,
That's the one.
Okay. Okay.
Which one is that?
Yeah, I don't see that.
So that,
It's not low to the ground, so water just goes directly under it. Mine is definitely very low to the ground, so it stops the water to some degree. But when I was getting undersurface water, that comes from their property.
Okay. This-
So at that point, my fence started to tip. And I leaned over the fence and I saw that. About a month later, then their fence started to fall. The other thing that I noticed about their fence, and I have no picture of this to verify this. During the 2 or 3 years that their fence has been up, when it's very windy, their gate will fly open. This is not the first time that I have seen that blue strap up there at the gate. Do I have any proof of that? No, but it has been up there. So if they're telling you this is the first time this gate has wobbled back and forth, it is not. The other point that Mara made about the vegetation coming over at the top of the fence and pulling their fence. This was a morning glory vine. Morning glory vines are not that strong to move a fence like that. Your vines, I think Mira or Tommy sent out Yvonne Steingrubby. Do you remember, Mira, when Yvonne Steingrubby came out?
You need to keep
Oh,
with your.
okay. Yvonne Steingrubby came out and she said, because the neighbor called and said, the weeds in between the two fences was causing a detriment and causing problems with their fence. Yvonne Steingrubby came out. She said, can we look at your fence? Because the neighbors will not let us come and look on their side of the fence. I said, why not? Well, they just won't. And there's this complaint about your fence, blah, blah, blah. I said, sure, come on in. So she came in and she looked down at the bottom of the fence. She looked between the two fences and she said, no, it is not because of the weed in between. It has something to do with the soil or the footing of the fence. If you look at how my fence is at the bottom, there is no way that any weeds can come on my side and crawl underneath the fence to theirs. There is a picture of how my fence looked when the house was for sale. And it's a picture with all the honeysuckle on the other side of my fence. I can't remove any, that's the one. And I can't go on their yard and remove any of that. That's up to them. And you can see in that picture how the lot descends there. Okay, so I think I've established the erosion problem. So the landscaper that I had, he has put up the wall at the front of the library. If you all have seen that wall, he has also put up the design area at the front of Avery School. I have not seen that, but he has put that up. He has worked with timber landscaping. So he knows what he's doing in regards to that. And then I put the articles in there about why I am opposed to removing all of the rock. There is a pipe in there to remove the water. And if water sits next to a wood fence post, it's going to rot, eventually rot. And I think I've shown you more than enough evidence that you can see that water is an issue there. I decided not to put up a wooden fence because it will not stay. I have serious reservations as to why the developer put up a wooden fence there, knowing that the drainage problems that I had and that he had to correct during the building of that house. He was issued a stop work order because of the drainage that was coming to my house. So did he tell these people that there was a drainage problem there when they said, we want to put a fence right next to her yard? This is a descending slope. I have pictures, which two of them I did not get in the packet last night, but I'd like to pass it around to show you. When my landscaper dug the soil away, there were several on my side, on the east side of the fence. There was no concrete, no rocks around one of the wooden posts. I doubt that the wooden post was put according to the frost line. The frost line, wherever it is in the country, is the depth of the soil, the depth that's needed to put a fence post in so that the frost line will not damage the top of the fence where it meets the soil. You all know about the frost line, right? Okay. So I have serious doubts. And from what Mira said tonight, nobody looks at a fence post. The inspector doesn't have to come out and do that when they're installing the fence. But I have questions about that. Which I thought an inspector would come out and do that, but so this is news to me. So that means the post would be sitting in water if I took this. Am I allowed to show them?
So we need to first create an exhibit number for it, and then we pass it around. You need to stay back where you are.
Okay.
This is being entered in as Exhibit A10. That's going to cover a total of 2 photographs. There's only this one set. I do need them back for the record.
Thank you.
So for the purposes of the record, could you describe those photos?
Could I
Could you
describe my?
tell us what those photos are of?
There's, naturally, when I was going to remove my fence, and I'm assuming that this happened to them when they put their fence up. Soil that close together falls when you're removing some of the soil. There's just no way that you cannot stay away from something that close. Soil's going to fall. So we noticed that there was no rock around the fence. There was no concrete. So I don't know how they thought this was going to be stabilized with all this water. I'm not sure what these people or the crew who put the fence in even knew about my property. I don't know if they looked over the fence. I have no idea. But if I had been them, I would have looked over the fence to see that it's a sloping grade. So I think therein begins their fence problems.
Do you have any idea, you may not, these photos?
They were
How
taken
much
just
further
since
down
March.
the fence post goes?
Pardon?
Do you have any idea how much further down the fence?
No, I don't, because
'Cause
we
it looks
didn't,
to me like, just casually looking here, there's from the old, where the soil was, down to, as far as you've dug out, it's a good foot, maybe a little more.
I think it's a little more than that because we wanted to get a good footing for the retaining wall, and you have to angle it a little bit so that it's stable.
Mhm.
So that's what we did. It's not a big fence. We want it to be stable. We want to remove the water is my purpose.
Oh, it went all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Passing them back to.
The other question I have,
I've got a question for you. When you did this work that we just saw in those photos, was there any conversation with your neighbors about what was going on?
no, I don't speak to them. During the construction project, the construction crew would park right out in front of my driveway, and I could not get out of my driveway. So we would tell the developer, move this stuff. I mean, it would not just be one big truck. It would be a concrete truck. It would be 2 or 3 pickup trucks, blah, blah, blah. I said, can you move this out of the way? There was a porta potty down there too. If you've seen my property or driven by my house, I have a descending driveway, and up at the corner is Rock Hill Road and Gore. And most of the people run that stop sign to begin with. So they're running the stop sign, coming down the corner, and then, they could hit me when I'm backing out. The neighbor who lives 2 doors down was hit when she was backing out of her driveway. So this was the first point of contention. I said, please park away, park on the other side of the street or whatever, so I can get out of my driveway. Then,
Clarify the question of, you're asking her about talking to the current neighbors during this work, not the construction during the house. Is that what your question was?
Yeah, when
Your
the fence
question
was
was-
built,
No. So
when her work was done.
when her work was done,
done,
did she talk with the current neighbors?
When the,
That's not what she's answering you.
Right.
okay, no, I did not, because I saw her taking pictures on my surveillance cameras of my back bedroom one day. She was peeking over the fence. He saw it. It's on my surveillance cameras. She has her phone up there and she's heading it towards my bedroom. So I called the police and I said, you can tell this neighbor that if I see her do that again, I'm going to file a lawsuit. I said, whenever I take pictures on that side, it's pictures of their fence when it's causing an issue with me. So no, I don't talk to them at all.
okay, so there was not any discussion from your neighbor or you to them, either one of you then? Because as you're saying, you didn't talk to that neighbor
Period. Right. You got it.
because of difficulties, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I have a question. Can I go on, or anybody else? Okay, so has anyone tested this neighbor's fence since my garden wall is somewhat complete? Because I haven't seen anybody out there without the blue straps on. Are we just taking the neighbor's word for this, or has anybody, because
Would that be a question for one of the inspectors, Mara?
I can tell you, we have not been out since then. And it's not that we test it in any way. There's no testing to be done. If the fence could be stable, I'm sure that the homeowners would probably take those straps off. I'm sure they don't want them connecting. But again, we have not gone out. There's no testing that we do. If it was destabilized at that time, we ask it to be stabilized. If we've been told by either of the property owners that everything is in compliance, we'd go out and do a final inspection and this nuisance violation would go away.
Is that really within the purview of the building department or inspection?
So because this is a nuisance violation, they have to come into compliance, and we do go out to confirm that there is compliance. Typically, this is a neighbor versus, this is an issue between 2 neighbors. The city does not typically get involved. We require these 2 neighbors to work out their situation. We did get multiple, when we get a violation request, we go out and do that inspection. If we find something that is not in compliance, we will send that violation notice. If the neighbors can work it out together and get it figured out, we will go back out, confirm that everything is good, and we will make that violation be closed. At this time, this violation is not closed because there's not a satisfaction on both sides that this has been addressed correctly.
are you a little
Mrs.
more?
Howell, do you have?
Okay. I believe the wall has made the fence more stable and stronger than before. Even before any of my construction was done, the neighbors had placed a blue strap on the gate area. As one day when it was windy, the gate kept popping open and was swinging back and forth. I have read that a wobbly post are usually caused by improper installation. If the wobbly post is over 5 years old, it's usually due to a post that's rotting. This fence has only been up maybe 3 years at the most. So I would attribute it to improper installation. However, I'm a nurse. I'm not a fence installer, so this is not a professional opinion. Also, I believe the soil was disturbed when they put their fence so close to mine and caused my fence to lean and fall, and nothing has been done about that, so I decided to take it down. These people are worried about their fence. I'm worried about keeping water away from my house. It was not my intent to do anything to destroy their fence. I actually want to get the fence issue done so that I can get a dog. I cannot get a dog because of their fence is so high that there's a gap between the side of my yard and their fence. I have outlined in great detail the problems with the construction of the 337 house and the developer. I have no confidence in the developer or the crew he hired to put the fence up. He was never at the site to monitor what the construction crew was doing. I do not believe the fence posts were put in deep enough, 30 or 33 inches for the frost line, nor secure from what we found out by putting the garden wall in. Example, the pictures. Did anyone look and see what was on the other side of the fence when they were putting it up? Did they see that there was a sloping grade? I am not responsible for their poorly constructed fence. Water comes from their yard, not mine. Water does not flow uphill, it flows downhill. If my soil is eroded, what does that have to do with their fence? Should not their fence stand alone over and above what I do on my property? Putting their fence so close to mine, how did they think they were going to maintain it? Why would Webster allow this to begin with? Well, now I know why, because Webster is not, they don't come out to inspect in great detail the installation of a fence. Finally, in 2019 or 2020, it was that I believe my attorney filed a lawsuit against the developer Lang, the developer of this. And the developer did not show up in court. He did not get an attorney. Paperwork with pictures that I have sent to you today was sent to the judge. We had to wait a year or 9 months to obtain a judgment on this case, because he has that period of time to file an appeal. He did not. During this time, as you know, COVID was happening, so there were delays. Finally, in about 9 months, my attorney sought a determination on the case, and the judge awarded me $75,000 for damages. However, this developer has not paid up. There's no check sitting out there for Janet Noble. So on and on, this gift of the wet soil on this side of the property continues. Here it is again with these people. So I don't know. I don't have any other solution to this. A retaining wall will keep the water away from my yard. I can take away part of the rock at the top, but what if and put soil there, but what if the soil compromises the draining pipe? So I don't know what else to do.
How deep is the drain pipe? If you looking at those pictures,
You what?
looking at the pictures, how far down you've dug, how much further down is the drain pipe?
The drain pipe is pretty close. Well, it's maybe 8 inches from the top.
Of what we see in that picture.
Yeah, and there's rock on it. The rock is compacted down. That's why I would like somebody from the city, or if you guys want to come over and feel how strong the fence is. When you push against it, it's very, very strong. So that's why I'm questioning that they're saying their fence is falling. Maybe we put it up too strong and the fence is falling that way. I don't know, but it's not falling like it was before. And the pipe will help keep their fence up, because they did nothing to resolve the water issue that they had. There's no pipe draining the water out back there. This is way, way in the back. It's very difficult to see there. My front yard and their front yard does not look like the back does. That's part of the problem with this. If this was readily seen, I think things would have been resolved a long time ago. So if you want me to take soil out at the top and or take the rock out of the top and put soil down, if they are concerned about the appearance of this, I can do that. But if I take all the rock out, it's going to destroy the whole purpose of me putting this wall up. And it's not going to help their fence, because I know their fence is definitely going to fail if I have to take this out. Because the soil that was there on my side was soil erosion. There's nothing there. You know, you could see my fence is falling.
Okay, here's what I don't know. You got rock there, you want to leave it there because of the drain pipe.
Correct.
So what I don't know is if you then fill dirt on top of the current gravel, I don't know if that will stabilize the fence or not.
Well, I think the fence,
Do
yeah.
you know that?
It's not up to us to decide.
It's not up, no. Yeah, we're not here to stabilize the fence, technically, yeah.
We're here to decide. Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have anything more, Ms. Noble, at this time? Do you have anything more?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak regarding docket 20, in favor of docket 2393?
Yeah.
Yes.
State your name and raise your right hand.
My name is James Rhodes.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
I will try to keep my remarks short.
That microphone up.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm a friend of Janet. I'm a retired environmental engineer. I am not a soil engineer or a structural engineer. My specialty when I was working was water, wastewater, and that sort of thing. So I've seen a lot of stormwater issues. So I'll make a few points. First of all, the house that was built was larger in terms of the area that it occupied, the footprint. So it had more of an impervious, the roof, which resulted in more water coming off. And since it is higher, there is a problem with stormwater coming onto Ms. Noble's property. So that's something that was done as a result of the construction of this house. And I don't know what the stormwater plan that they filed, what that said. I haven't looked at it. So she has a right, I think, in my mind, to try to defend herself against the excess water runoff that's now coming onto her property. And I think the retaining wall made a lot of sense. I looked at it. Again, I'm not a structural engineer, but it looked like it was fairly well constructed and you know, done properly. The fence that I see there, and I think Janet made a good point, that it's really hard to say what exactly is causing the fence to fall. Maybe the soil is lower than it used to be. I didn't see it before the fence was put in. I never visited the property before then. But I do know that fences, that's a fairly tall fence. It's a 6-foot high fence. And if you only have a foot, maybe a foot and a half, that's really not large and long enough for the post to go in the ground. I've had to deal with this myself. I used to live in Glendale. I had a railing on a sloping part and it was starting to fall down. So I took it out. You know, you get these cardboard tubes that you can buy at Home Depot. You put them in the ground, you put the fence inside there and you fill it with concrete. So you have a footing of some sort. That is the correct way to do that. And unfortunately, the city's building code doesn't specify that you have to do that, but that's really the best way to put a fence up, is to do something like that. And pardon me? Yes. And I would think that put in something like that 2 feet in the ground would be the best way to stabilize that fence, if that's really the problem. Whose responsibility that is that? I don't know. I mean, I can't say, I'm not an attorney, but it would seem to me that if the issue is solving that problem with the fence, that would be the best way to do it. I also agree with Janet, the letter that she got from Travis Ham, who I know because I had some work done in the house and I live in Webster and Hollywood Hills. And Travis was very nice. It was a little confusing as to what she was being asked to do. It did say that all the rock had to be taken off and replaced with soil. And to me, that really didn't make a lot of sense because there's no inherent reason why the rock would be any less strong if it's gravel put in than soil is. So, I agree with Janet that the letter she got, and I can understand the reasons for her confusion. So those are my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak in favor of docket 2393? Is there anyone opposed to docket 2393?
And just a clarification to ask if there's anyone online who would like
Online,
to
yes,
speak
that's
as
right.
well as
I'm
in
sorry.
person.
I'm sorry. Is there anyone online?
No one is raising their hand.
And is there anyone in opposition online or in the audience? Hearing none, seeing none.
Ms. Salzberg, I would ask after the public has had their chance that I have an opportunity to recall
Yes.
Ms. Perry as in response to what has been presented.
Please go ahead, Mr. Bontrager.
So I would call Mara Perry. I believe you're already under oath.
Yes.
Ms. Perry, you've heard everything that's been said by Ms. Noble and those in favor of her appeal. There's obviously been a lot of talk of water runoff and previous interactions and a relationship between the two properties. As part of this code violation, does the city have any issue with what sort of fill is used on that retaining wall?
So no, we would have put in a letter if there was something requiring a specific design. Our letters were very specific in stating that they just need to resolve the issue. How that issue gets resolved could need a permit, may not need a permit. So we were leaving it open to address that issue. We were not specifically saying they had to take rock out or soil out in any way. So we're just leaving it as what we are asking and what's being appealed is simply to make get the matter resolved so that the fence is stable. How that is accomplished has not been specified by the city. It's not under your purview either, but it would be related to whether they would hire someone or work with someone to help stabilize that fence section.
And I know you stated earlier that you don't have an opinion as to, the city hasn't provided a position as to how this nuisance should be abated. Have you received anything from the applicant by way of abating that nuisance?
No, we have not received anything from the applicant about how they would abate that nuisance.
And do you have any opinion about how that might be abated?
We don't have a particular opinion. If they want to provide multiple different options or means, we are perfectly fine with it. It's just how to stabilize or repair those fence sections that are no longer stable.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add?
Just that, again, our focus here is on what has happened in 2023 in regards to the work that was done and the work and its impact on the neighboring property. That is our focus. I know that there's a lot of history to this property, but our focus is on the most recent work and the destabilization of the fence. And that is the only thing that this violation letter is in regards to. And that is the only item that we are asking to be addressed.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Perry about this additional testimony? Before we go ahead.
Is there no option for you to speak with your neighbors, try to come with some sort of compromise? Is it, and I asked the victim side, I don't know. Is it possible that you could reach a compromise with your neighbors, that perhaps they could have some fence company look, you could get together, you could see a reasonable solution here? Is that possible, that you could do that? It would seem to me that if you could determine how to repair the problem, then we can fix the problem. It may not be about rock, it may be about many things, none of which we can adjudicate. But if you
Right.
had someone that looked at it, that was knowledgeable about fence, Kirkwood fence,
Mm-hmm,
Chesterfield fence, they work for me.
mm-hmm.
Someone like that, impartially to come and look and say, look, this is how you solve the problem. Could we take that approach? Is that doable?
I think Randy has a good point. Our purview is not to offer,
Yeah.
solutions. Ours, but
Chuck, your microphone's off.
don't know why it keeps going off. Randy's correct. I mean, you have to you look to get that type of solution. Mara's
Mhm.
Mara's correct in that that regard. We can offer solutions in that
Right.
respect. You have to go to a professional for that. That's not our purview.
Right.
So you have to offer that, to us.
Well, here's the thing. I can't make that property owner do any of the recommendations, even if I would get a fence person to come out.
Well-
So how would that be the end of what I have to do then? Or what? Cause see, this just keeps going on and they keep calling the city on me with things that don't pan out, like the weeds in between. My fence goes all the way down. I cannot come over on their side of the property and do that, take the weeds away or whatever.
You're taking water on from their property.
Correct.
All right.
See, I don't think how can I say this? I think they're ignorant as to what's going on to my property. There were 2 fences there when they moved in. It's very hard to see over.
Right.
And there's no plants back there to absorb anything. I've worked with the Webster Groves Garden Club. I was a vice president. We've had drainage people come in. We have people talk about native plants. I've got native plants all over. So I know how to deal with some of the water issues. So it's not my job to educate these people on what will solve the problem. That's one of the reasons why I really like to know, is their fence really falling? And is it because of the work that I did? Because their fence had problems before I even did construction.
But I think my point is, unless you know how the ways in which it can be repaired,
Okay,
it's very difficult to discern what caused what here.
right.
Did this retaining wall and I understand the stone for the drainage. I have a couple of French drains to do this in my yard. I understand completely why you're doing what you're doing. Is it possible to put dirt on top of that? Sure, you've got a good person who built the wall, they can help with that.
Okay,
Is that gonna solve the problem magically? I don't know.
right.
Because I think it requires someone with expertise about fencing
Okay,
that's gonna help you all understand how this problem can be solved.
okay.
And if you can resolve it, then you've got a good retaining wall, you've helped your drainage, and they got their fence. And if we can, is that possible? And I'm asking because I don't know these folks, and I don't know you really.
Right.
But is it possible to say, look, can we just get together and get somebody to come and look at this thing and make it some sort of a judgment as to a fix, and then see how we can proceed from there? Is that doable?
I can call a fence company. But I don't want to deal with these people. I don't trust in what they're going to say, what they're going to tell the city people. I don't trust them.
Well, you've got to understand, we're here.
I know.
We're not fence experts.
I know.
You've got a tough story about drainage and into your yard. But our decision is really, is the city is asking you to stabilize the fence. And is this
Right.
the correct position or not? That's really what,
That's all we can-
Right.
that's really, yeah. We can feel sorry for you, and I do.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sit here and offer suggestions all night long, but we got a rule on
Right.
this, what-
Maybe this is a
whether
question
the
for an,
city's right or wrong here
for an attorney. I mean, even if I get a fence
No,
opinion from,
Unfortunately, that may be your only recourse.
do what?
Unfortunately, that may be your only recourse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I've been involved in arbitrations, and I've been doing this for 45 years. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, that's the way some of these things may go. And, but, it may be the only route you have. So.
Okay. You want to speak again? Okay. Jim would like to speak again to make a comment. Is that
Okay, okay.
agreeable?
Okay.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Thank you
still under
for,
oath, remember?
I realize that. Thank you very much. It seems to me that if you uphold this order, that given the fact that Janet and her neighbors don't really get along very well, that it's really going to be up to Janet to solve the problem and pay for it. And that will undoubtedly cost several $1,000s. We don't really know, none of us knows whether the work that she did was the basic problem that caused this fence to be unstable. It might have been installed without a very good foundation, which is my theory. So I would just ask you to consider her. She's a single woman. I don't think she has a whole lot of resources. Is this really right for her to solve this problem? I don't have the answer to that, but I think this is really, I mean, ideally they would get
Jim,
together and work this out.
Jim, she gets a good lawyer. She might not have to pay for anything.
Yeah, but
You're-
lawyers cost money.
Jim,
You know
you're-
that.
you're
I know that.
presupposing.
Okay, but,
Right.
but
You're
going back,
presupposing.
I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
So
We-
I would say,
we have no proof that that there was a problem with the fence before the
Yeah.
construction started.
That's right.
you're making a
And-
judgment that she may not have to pay anything.
Right.
Okay? So I think you're making a judgment before something's already been decided.
I'm not, what type of judgment am I making?
You're saying that she's gonna have to pay for this. She may not have to.
I would assume that
You're
if
making,
you,
yeah, but you're making an assumption. I wouldn't make any assumptions right now.
well, I'm just legally, if you find
Jim,
it,
I wouldn't
This is-
say any
Okay,
more
all
about
right.
it.
This is really not
I
the
just-
purview of the board. This
all
is
right,
not the
this is
purview of the
the
board.
board.
okay,
We're gonna make a decision, and I think she gets a good lawyer. I think she's got,
Okay,
all right.
okay, but,
I-
all right,
I appreciate your time.
all right,
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
So does anyone have any questions for either the property owner or for Mara before we close the public session? Are we ready to close the public session and move to board discussion?
So moved.
Can we have a motion regarding 2393 so we can start discussion?
I'll motion that we uphold the appeal.
And we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
And just so we're clear, is that an affirming the city's finding?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, the motion is to affirm the city's position, yes,
for discussion.
right. Okay, what do you guys,
I think this is a really unfortunate situation, but there's enough evidence that it's kind of a mutual nuisance. While the construction of the retaining wall most probably should have involved more oversight in terms of the protection of that existing fence at 337, the standards of how that fence were built are a mystery. And the presence of water and erosion contributing to the lack of structural integrity of 337's fence is pretty clear in the images that have been presented. You know, unfortunately, the process is being used here to bring the city on board and creating this as opposed to there being cooperation between both residents. So I find it, I would find it hard to, vote in favor of the motion I just made.
Well, I'm in agreement with you, but our motion is what? To affirm the city's position.
That's correct.
That's correct.
A yes vote means we think the city's ruled correct.
That would be correct. I'm just sharing my outlook.
Yeah, I'm just. Yeah, I've already stated, I think a lot has happened here. It's just too bad. There can't be some cooperation. Points made down here are very good about.
All right.
It's a tough position. I feel for the people and somebody probably just put this fence in and didn't think it through, but that's neither here nor there. So
I just consider how the vote on this will either encourage or discourage both property owners to come to an agreeable solution and participate in it.
mhm.
Well, and I'm disturbed by the fact that at one point in time we had dueling fences, you know, that seems, really ridiculous. And, but that's neither here nor there. Randy?
Well, I mean, the problem we have is we have no knowledge of how this fence was built. We can guess and wonder all we want. We haven't the first clue. And I think absent that knowledge, you can't make any judgments. What we know is that since this wall has been there have been changes to the fence. And so there may be something there. I think absent any kind of an engineer or somebody who can come in and take a look at this and give a judgment, I think the only thing one can assume is that the retaining wall contributed in some way to this change. And if it did, it's got to be rectified. The unfortunate thing is that these folks can't work together to solve the problem. And we can't adjudicate that. We can't force that.
No.
But to me, as much as it disturbs me to say it, I think I'd have to uphold the city's decision.
Chuck?
I agree. I think we have to look at it that way. And I think as an owner, Janet has to force the issue with her neighbor.
I do too.
And it's unfortunate that that's what it has to come down to. You know, this neighbor has not done what they need to do to resolve this issue, and it's caused you a problem.
I know.
And unfortunately, you're the one that's going to have to force them to make this right. If that means they have to go back to the contractor, even go back to the designer, because the designer apparently has maybe not fulfilled their obligation to resolve this issue. It goes back to how the house is laid out on the property, how the site plan was done, how the drainage was designed to run off the property. I mean, I look at Jim's letter. He points out in there that, you know, as property owner, you're taking on runoff. He quotes that in his letter. As part of this packet. Okay, so, you know, they need to take responsibility for that. I do take some issue with, you know, he says, well, maybe they should have put in a structure to take on that runoff. I don't know how many single family residences in Webster Groves have a structure to take off the excess runoff. I don't think there's many. Jim, have you done any? I don't think there are, but be that as it may, I think you may have to take the bull by the horns and just force the issue. You know, as an architect for 40+ years, I have to maintain a good relationship with governing agencies. That's my responsibility. That's the responsibility of any design professional. But governing agencies, they inspect, you know, the properties and the buildings that are within their purview.
Okay.
But they're not designers.
Do you have any more comments for?
No.
So-
This is our discussion.
Yeah, this
right?
is our discussion, right,
That conversation's done.
right. Does anyone,
Not designers. So,
okay,
you know,
okay, right.
we need to make the
Go ahead,
vote.
Randy.
Well, I just have one question. Do you ever cite the people whose fence is falling?
Peter, am I allowed to answer? Because I thought we're in deliberations and
I'm not trying to be nasty. I'm asking out of ignorance. It's their fence that's falling.
I think the answers have been given in the questions. But I don't think there's any problem. I think it's already been discussed, but I don't think there's any problem with you talking about it.
I guess my question is then the judgment has been previously made that the retaining wall caused the failure of the fence, whether it did or not.
Randy,
Again, I believe Ms. Perry has already answered that question.
If you don't,
No, ma'am, you
no,
cannot.
no, I'm asking that though, is that the argument that the
they're in
city's saying?
conversation.
And that's okay. I understand. If that's the argument, then I understand. The wall was straight, the
Fence.
fence was good. Retaining wall goes in, the fence not good anymore.
right, but the fence at 337 was falling down before
I understand that.
the retaining wall went in.
I understand that.
Okay.
That's not the wall, that's not the fence I care about.
Well, no, it's the same fence.
Okay, 337 is the fence that is now
that's what-
falling.
yeah.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
So
so-
my question is, doesn't that make it seems to me that my only concern is that the assumption's been made that the retaining wall is the cause of the problem, but yet we sit here and argue that we can't tell that. How do we know? Can you cite both people? I'm asking of ignorance.
Well, I think we've got to take the information we've been given by the city.
I
and
understand.
That's what we have to go with
My question is though,
and
Can-
relate it to what
that's one
Mrs.
question.
Noble said.
The next question is, and I understand that completely, and I do not disagree with you in any way, shape, or form. But my question is, would it force a conversation?
It's not
If
gonna
you
be
said,
much of
hey,
a-
it's your fence that's
It's not
falling.
gonna be much of a conversation if we support the city's position on this,
Well-
because the fence at 337 was falling down before 333's retaining wall was constructed.
I guess. Well, there are concerns. The other fence is there at the same time and there were concerns.
Right.
That's what I'm
There's
saying.
documentation of the erosion undermining 337's fence.
Well, building a fence didn't cause erosion. That's not why there's erosion there. Putting a fence in didn't suddenly cause an erosion problem. I don't believe that. There'd be we've had no evidence presented to suggest that.
Right.
I'm
But
just
there
trying to
was
see, I'm just
erosion-
trying to think of a way to, if we could get a conversation. Obviously, that's really
I-
beyond the
I
purview and I
appreciate
probably
that.
should not suggest it of what we're doing. Our job today is to adjudicate what we think about this current situation. And that's really what we should confine our remarks to. I was just asking to try to see if there was another venue, another way to do this. And I'm probably wrong.
Anyone else want to make any comments before we call
No.
the question? Okay, so the petition, the motion we have before the board is to uphold the city's determination that this was a violation. So an I vote means that the city is correct, stands, and no vote means that the city's violation is, citation is not appropriate, correct?
Yes.
And the motion needs 4 of 5, excuse me, there needs to be
Yes.
simply 2 to pass.
Yep.
Excuse me, Peter?
So there needs to be 4 of 5 total to overturn the city's decision. So the motion itself is only to affirm.
Okay.
There could, I misspoke. There could be a motion following this one if necessary.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Good. Okay, so
We could follow with another motion.
That would
Right, why don't we
require a
do the
different
one
type of vote.
motion? Why don't we do the one motion and we can discuss it
Yes.
then?
Yeah. I do want-
okay. All in favor of upholding the city's violation notice, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so it appears that the city's violation notice has been upheld.
Can we do a roll call vote, please?
I'm sorry, yes, please, Tom, please pull the board.
Deb Solberg,
Aye.
John Burse,
No.
Randy Sprague.
Aye.
Charles Yonke. Tom Walls, aye.
So it appears that the city violation notice request has been affirmed. Your request has not been approved. I'm sorry. You will need to see city staff during regular business hours for your next steps.
So the only other business is we do have a meeting coming up again in 2 weeks or a little over that.
And that meeting's at 6:30.
That meeting is also at 6:30 because we have 4 items on. I am trying very hard to get you packets as early as possible, either Wednesday or Thursday.
But I should be able to go home and read about them in the Webster Kirkwood Times tonight, right?
All
should have-
4 of them, I think the ads actually
Was
were in
last week.
last Friday.
Last Friday, yes.
If no one has anything else, do you want to make a motion to
Uh,
close the hearing?
Do we have a motion to?
I move we close the meeting.
All in favor? Oh, a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
This is a tough. This was
Thank you, gentlemen, for coming.
Guys.